Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue, and there are two main drawbacks that keep the Kamado Joe Kettle Joe in a good grill versus a great grill category. But I think I have fixes for both of them, and I'm going to share them with you today, and we're going to put it into action by cooking a massive 3-pound porterhouse steak and see if these issues are a thing of the past. Let's get into it. So my first issue is on display behind me in full force, which is the lack of gasket material included in the factory stock Kamado Joe Kettle Joe configuration. Even the less expensive Joe Jr. comes with a gasket material. The oldest Kamado Joe in the lineup, the Series 1, comes with gasket material. Or if you're fortunate enough to get a Series 3, it comes with even better gasket material. This is a big differentiator. Gaskets have been an important part of the Kamado Joe value proposition, and so when the Kettle Joe came out gasketless, I was a little suspicious if this would work, but I had a pellet Joe. I used that with only a gasket on the top versus the bottom, and it sealed fine. So I remained eternally optimistic that maybe this gasketless design is a way of the future. But after a few cooks, especially on my pre-production model, doing low and slow cooks, whether it be brisket, pork, or ribs that are fattier foods, the humidity would fill the dome, find its way to the corners, it would condensate, and black grease streaks would run down everywhere. The second pet peeve that I have is the usability for everyday things that I do and I'm accustomed to, which is switching from low and slow to hot and fast. And that may not sound like a big deal, but let me show you what I'm on about. If we want to do something as simple as reverse searing a steak, this is the challenge with the slow roller setup. Okay, so let's say we were grilling along and we were maybe already reverse searing our steak using the slow roller on the Kettle Joe, something I've done many times, and it turns out a great result. I'll give you this for the Kettle Joe. Despite a few little hiccups, the food tastes amazing. At the end of the day, that's all that counts, which is why I remain committed to getting rid of these little wiggles so we can get rid of the inconvenience and just have the full-fledged fun experience. But if we were ready to go from reverse searing to searing, there is no way to get direct access to our fire down below. And so since the slow roller, like all slow rollers, is heat limited to not to exceed 500 degrees Fahrenheit, we have to get rid of this. But unlike in our Series 3 Joes, where the slow roller can be removed and stored underneath the Kamado cart, there is absolutely nowhere to put this guy. So we have to take a hot slow roller that presumably has some grease on it, try and manage and find a spot for it to be stored. Then while the grill is hot, we need to come around back, pull out this pin, loosen the back here of the dome, get it to drop down to where our pin re-engages. There, we've got it. And again, our grill would be hot at this point, and then re-tighten everything back, just so we can now come around to the front. And then we would take our hot cooking grids that were on our slow roller, drop them in either the high position or maybe the low position on the charcoal basket for a sear, or maybe one a little higher if we were trying to do something maybe not directly exposed to the coals. But since the shape of the firebox you can see here is more of a cone shape than a big flat base like it is on, for example, the Big Joe or the Classic Joe, all the coals tend to combine and join in one hot center area. So it's really difficult to get any heat separation. We'd be able to do our sear. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I think I have a fix for it. So first, let's tackle the gasket issue and the smoke leaks or the grease leaks, and then I'll share my fix for indirect cooking. So to get our new gasket material to adhere, particularly on a grill that we've used a couple times and started to get some grease, I've already started to wipe it, but we need to go a little bit more heavy duty. So I've got an SOS pad, and so what we're gonna do is just help clean this all the way around. And then when my wife's not looking, stolen some of her nail polish removal solution and paper towel, and then we'll clean that, and then I'll wipe it with a cleaner. I'll take you fast forward while we get to work, but this is gonna help rough up a little bit of the surface, get rid of any grease, and just make sure that when we go to stick on our adhesive, that it actually adheres. Okay, so as you can see, it didn't take much work. and we went from sort of black sitting on the bottom where our gasket will adhere to back to factory red. So to clean that off now, I'm just going to get a little bit of acetone or nail polish remover, whatever you have, even an antibacterial gel with rubbing alcohol or something like that in it will work. Just get a little bit of this on our paper towel and we're going to wipe it clean. Okay, now that we've got a nice clean paint surface, this is still really smooth to the touch. And while our gasket will stick once, I'm worried after a couple of heat cycles it will come undone if there's not anything other than a really smooth surface. So I've just got a little bit of sandpaper. This is 100 grit. I don't think that matters too much, but I'm just going to rough up now our edge of the paint, not too aggressively, but just a little bit to help make sure that that gasket adheres not only today, but well into the future. So take a fast forward again while we rough this up. Okay, that looks good. I just have a Lysol cleaning wipe, but a microfiber cloth, a damp cloth would work just fine. I want to get this nice and clean now of any of those bits of contamination that might prevent our gasket from adhering. And then I've got a piece of paper towel. We will wipe this dry, since anything that's damp isn't going to adhere at all to our tape. Okay, I'll try and put a link to this down below, but I found on Amazon it's Only Fire 1/2 inch gasket material. I went for 1/2 inch high heat gasket material versus some of the other ones I have some extra gasket material, but they're too thick and wide to work for what we want. Right here, let me get this off. So what we want is just the material to sit in here and not be out like this, because again, the fire coming up will just hit that and cause it to burn. So I'll take you fast forward while we start to adhere our gasket. With any gasket, you want to just follow the curve naturally and not be really stretching it thin, because as it gets some heat cycles and starts to dry out, it'll want to on stretch, which is going to be tearing at your adhesive, and ultimately that gasket will fall off much more quickly than if we hadn't done that. So we'll just peel back our backing here, line it up, and then just start following along the curvature of our dome. I'll take you fast forward while I do the rest. So as we start to get to a spot where we're gonna match back up, we'll just get our scissors here, cut that, pull off our tape, matches right up. So let's push this down now, make sure it's nice and flat all the way. Okay, let's test fit that now for seal. Perfect, nice soft close. And I think that will be sealing up much better than stock. Let's do our slow roller now. I'll take you fast forward for that. Okay, that looks good. Let's go test fit it. Okay, so now that we've adjusted our hinge back for the slow roller, we've got felt on the bottom, which is adhering to the base, which will help cut down on some of those leaks from the bottom of the slow roller. And then we've got our gasket on the top, which will help cut down on any leaks on the top portion of the slow roller. And when the slow roller is not installed, this will be the only felt that's in contact with our base. Let's check open and close here. Perfect fitment. That's sitting really nice. Actually feels more like closing my Series 1 Big Joe now with that felt gasket. It's got a bit of a sort of a softer touch to it and it seals nice. So now that we have our gasket issue sorted on the slow roller as well as on the dome, I think that's going to solve our grease issue. And I have a little bit of gasket material left over, so save this, don't throw it out. This is great for adding around the base of your control tower top. So if you have a control tower top that's loose and wants to fly off when you open your dome, having a little bit of extra gasket material will fix that in about a 2-minute job. So now that we've got issue number 1 resolved, let's move on to issue number 2. And the product that I picked up to fix that is one that you wouldn't think for a Kamado Joe product, but is the S&S Slow and Sear Deluxe Edition. So let me go over to the Joe and we'll test fit it together, make sure it fits, along with a heat deflector solution. Just pull out our cooking grids for a moment. So one of the things that I do love about the Kettle Joe is it opens up a different universe of accessories. Being 22 inch in size, this is the same size as many popular Weber kettle models, and one of the most popular accessories in the Weber world is this Slow and Sear basket. So let me show you how this drops in. So just like so, we now have a half charcoal basket. So what we'll do is we'll fill this half up with charcoal. We have a water pan here that if we wanted to either fill this up with water or have additional charcoal capacity, we could do that. But that would give us some humidity. And then for cooking, we'll be able to drop a grid right above it. So this will be able to give us our nice hot sear surface. For our indirect cooking, I've picked up a spare Kamado Joe Big Joe heat deflector. So the classic is 18 inches, the Big Joe is 24 inches, and this grill is 22 inches. So the soapstone doesn't fit because it's larger, but the half heat shield deflectors do. So that half deflector just so happens to barely fit. Now I wouldn't want to give this a big jolt or a shake because it might work itself loose. But now I have a complete indirect cool zone. So if we wanted to do a reverse sear steak, which is what we're gonna do in a couple minutes, I no longer have to worry about that slow roller issue and changing the dome height. We'll be able to reverse sear our steak right over here with absolutely no heat coming up from the bottom and keep our fire contained and separated, unlike before where it just sort of all piles down into the center and the entire grill is hot, and have a nice hot sear surface over here to the left that we can work with. So I'm excited to see if this works. Let's get some charcoal, put it all into action. While I have you nice and close, show you the trick to opening a string bag of charcoal. Look for the short end. We just want to pull that piece of string through the loop once, twice. Oh, hi, Bella. Bella, you shouldn't do that. Sorry, Bella is very excited, but now we'll be able to just pull all the way through. And I'll mention, this is same as the Fogo Super Premium, just smaller pieces. So I've got that, which should fit inside of our basket a little bit better. So let's just flip over our grid, add in some water, dump in some charcoal, grab our Grill Blazer grill gun, let's fire it up. Okay, that looks good. We have some white ashed over coals. Bottom vent is all the way open. So let's close the dome. Let's close the dome and then open the top vent all the way and let that come up to temperature. All right, well, our Kettle Joe is coming up to temperature. Let's get some seasoning onto our Porterhouse. Now, normally if you have the time to dry brine overnight, I am a huge fan of that since it will just help the steak or whatever you're cooking retain more moisture. But if you can't do that, the next best option, well, I guess the next best option would be to do it 4 hours in advance and let it sit at room temperature. So we're on to number 3, which is immediately before we go on the grill. So let's get this out. Oh, lovely. Now that's a steak. I like it. So like always, game plan is just to give it a little bit of umami binder. Anything with truffle oil in it works just as well, but I find it's in good supply. Truff oil does that, but anything with a little bit of truffle oil goes really nice. So let's get a little bit of binder on. Stuff is pricey, so you don't need too much. And if you're worried about tasting hot sauce, especially with this quantity that I'm just using here, trust me, you will not get the sensation on the tongue or flavor of hot sauce. You're just going to get a little bit of almost smoky depth, which is amazing and really nice. Okay, next, and this is Diamond Crystal Kosher Salt. So this is my go-to everyday dry brining salt. It's the least salty salt, if you will, if that makes sense, but it gives us all the benefits of the salt without turning our food into something that only deers will enjoy. So let's give this a nice coating. And since this is about a 3-inch, 3-pound steak, we can get away with being fairly liberal with that and not have to worry about overdoing it. Next, we're just going to do some garlic. And last but not least, we'll get some pepper. So I'm just going to actually adjust my Canon here to a little bit more of a coarse setting. And that's perfect. So that's about 20 clicks now, because I've reduced it. It was about 24 or 25. I've come back to about 20, and that's giving us nice thick granules for our pepper. And do the last side here. We'll grab a meter probe, and I'm going to go right down the middle here till I pass the line. Perfect. Let's go check on our grill. Okay, so we're flying up towards 500 degrees quickly, so let's close our bottom draft door down to about 1.5 fingers, 1 finger there, that's good. And we're gonna bring our top vent to just about 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch past the first line on the control tower top. Let's take a look at our fire. You can see our charcoal bed is spreading. We're getting a nice glowing base, and I think that's going to be perfect. Let's get our steak and throw it on there. These are the upgraded side shelves by Smokeware, by the way, if you're wondering. They give a lot more usable space, which is nice, and they look premium. There's a premium grill, should look premium. I just love them for that. And I get a save 10% from everything Smokeware, so I'll make sure to link to that down below. So for our steak, what we want to do is stay nice and clear of that hot side, so I'm sitting right above my deflector. So again, there's no heat coming out from the bottom. It's all over to the side, and then we're protected with that vapor barrier, which will help sort of keep everything nice and moist from drying out. And it will also act as a bit of a heat sink and protection against anything from burning on this side. So let's close it up, let it cook. Okay, our reverse sear portion is done, and as you can see here on the meter graph, I took the opportunity just to flip the steak halfway through just to make sure we are cooking nice and even on both sides. As there's no heat really coming from the bottom, I'm not really worried about that so much as maybe any heat coming from the other side where our slow and sear basket is. Since it's the first time I'm using it, wanted to not take any chances, especially with a lovely large porterhouse like what we're cooking today. And so this has been sitting out in the ambient temperature. I'll put it up on the screen. It's on the meter. I can't remember. But it's not warm. And this is carried over cooking. I took it off at 120 degrees Fahrenheit, so we set the alarm for 119. By the time I got here and started to work on removing it, it had gone to 120. And this continued over the next 15 minutes to gain 11 degrees Fahrenheit. So it went all the way up, just sitting out here in the cool air from 120 to 131 degrees before starting to back down. That's a really important step. It gives us an opportunity to open the bottom vent all the way, open the top vent all the way, and let the fire start to kick up so we get ready for our sear. So it's going to make sure that we have a nice hot grill. But this is also really critical for making sure that we don't overcook our steak. I want a nice medium rare, so 135 degrees. If I were to go directly from cooking to searing, that same carryover cooking momentum would have happened. We would have gained 11 degrees plus the sear being even more, which would give it even more power. It'd be like accelerating on the highway all the way to 70 miles an hour full speed, and you don't want to go over 70 because there's a cop sitting right there, but then you don't let off the accelerator till you hit 70. You're going to continue to pass over that speed limit. The same is true with our steak. So we want to sort of time our crest a little bit earlier and really wait till we start to see that temperature come down. If you don't have a meter probe that does a nice job of charting that and giving you an opportunity to take notes in your cook so you can go back and refer to what worked and didn't work, know that it's about 15 minutes. So that is just perfect for a rest time. So now we've done our rest, we can get over for my favorite part, the sear. Let's go try this basket out, see how it does on a sear on our big porterhouse. I'll meet you over there. Okay, our Kettle Joe starting to look like a smoke on the water, deep purple song here, going nice and dark. Oh, I don't want to get my hand anywhere close to that. That's a lot of heat. All right, let's open it up. And you can see our coals have dropped down a little bit, so we're not going to be sitting directly on them. It's great. We've gone through about half of our water, which is in an open boil. I'll pull out the meter probe. It's done its job. Let's sear this. All right, that is looking lovely. Let's get it on the board and slice into it. All right, our steak looks amazing. So really happy so far with how that transition's gone. We went from low and slow to hot and fast, sitting right over those coals, closer than I'm used to. So got a little bit more on the bone here than what I want, but so far I think everything looks like a really good sear. So let's get this off the bone, slice into it for our taste test. All right, let's get a couple slices here right out of the middle. Let's check it out. That is looking good. Once the air hits this, this should bloom in to a beautiful medium rare, and that crust looks really good. So we are just paper thin crust on each side, and then really even done this all the way throughout. That's exactly what you want. So let's get a couple slices here, and of course do the same. And again, really nice edge to edge doneness. That is paper thin for the crust, so really happy with that. Slice these in half so they're bite size. And then I have a little bit of Malden smoked salt, so I'll just add a little bit to these two middle pieces here. Let's dig in. So start with out the salt here. That is a good steak, even without the overnight dry brine, which you can tell the difference. Like this still hits really well, but all the flavor, it's on the outer crust. So it's like one of those candies that's coated with an extra flavor on the outside. It hits you all there, but as you get down inside, it's not as pronounced. Whereas the overnight dry brine really lets the beef shine, and you get that rich beef flavor all the way through. You can clearly tell this is a steak, but let's try it with the salt, because normally that helps again sort of mask some of that, give us that full flavor. Oh, it's so good. All right, let's try the same thing. Other side of our porterhouse. Again, right on the money, full of flavor, super tender, as it should be. Now with the salt, wow. I'm gonna take this inside so it doesn't cool off too much for dinner. Rejoin you with my recap on our two modifications for our Kettle Joe. Do you smell something? Lucky you, lucky you. Oh, give that back. So as you can see, the lack of smoke or grease running down the front or the back, our gasket trick has done the job. In fact, I think I need to relearn my vent settings. So the only drops or changes that you see in the meter graph is me making little adjustments. Since this is so much more airtight than what I'm used to, the vent settings need to be reimagined to find the temperatures that I'm looking for. But I'm gonna call that a win. They've done exactly what I wanted. More stable control with the vents and less susceptible to any outside air causing either a runaway fire or potentially we're over choking things down. The slow and sear basket, by the way, I picked this up from Fogo charcoal. I'll put a link down below. Just like with charcoal, there's free shipping over $100, and so they've expanded their lineup, and that's where I picked this up, and I'm going to call that a win too. I'm going to do a few more tests, especially a low and slow cook. That's where the ash buildup really started to become a bit of a challenge. I can't wait to see how this works over a long, low, slow cook. I'm thinking pulled pork, but let me know what you guys want to see down in the comments. I'll be sure to do that. But I think for the problem that I primarily picked it up for is solving the headache of going from low and slow to hot and fast, being able to get a deflector in there, have a completely cool zone, and then switch to a hot zone. I see that in the ribbon of our slices where we're getting a nice crust and then immediate medium rare, not our crust, then a big sort of gray band, then a pink band, and then our medium rare band. We're getting not the full rainbow, it's crust, medium rare, crust. And that's the sign of that setup working exactly as what we want. Whether or not the water did anything, I don't know. We'll have to do a couple experiments. I think over a low, slow cook, something like pulled pork, that would be far more noticeable, as that would be where you'd start to see the smoke ring in your bark developing. Anyways, so far so good. I'm gonna put both of our upgrades in the win column. Let me know what you'd like to see next. But that's it for today's video. I'm James from Smokin' Dad Barbecue signing off. And remember, don't be afraid, fire it up.